to play the game.
Great. Thanks so much for joining today, Paul. I'm surprised you made it, actually. You had a pretty grueling match last night against Rusev.
Right here. Yeah. It's crazy because usually if I'm in front of this many people, they're going crazy and yelling and going nuts, and I'm spitting water and hitting people. So if I freak out and
it's all right.
It's all right. Don't worry.
Cool. Let's kick off the conversation. And there may be a few people in the arena who perhaps aren't that aware of the WWE, what it's about, what it stands for, and what you guys do. Just run us through that.
Sure. At our core, WWE is a, we're theater. We're storytelling. We're great storytelling with great characters, protagonist, antagonist, no different than any movie, theater, opera, Hollywood, anything. Protagonist, antagonist with storylines and conflict resolution. Just our conflict resolution happens in a 20 by 20 ring. We've been doing it for 50 years. We've built characters from Bruno Sammartino to Hulk Hogan, to The Rock, to Stone Cold, to John Cena, to Roman Reigns, to Charlotte Flair now. You know, WrestleMania 1 took place in 1984 in front of a sold-out crowd at Madison Square Garden, and it pioneered the pay-per-view industry. And now, flash forward to today, a few years ago, WrestleMania sold out 101,000 seats, breaking our own attendance record at an AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. And that you were able to see that around the world on any platform, any device available through the WWE Network, our own over-the-top streaming device.
So you mentioned the WWE Network. This is now a core part of your business. If people aren't familiar with it, it is your own over-the-top service, a subscription service. This is something you've really invested in and pushed hard. What's the growth been like?
The growth has been astronomical. I mean, right now it's our fastest growing business. In just a few years, it's the number 5 most popular OTT service in the world. You know, if you look at us from a business standpoint, WWE is a media juggernaut. That's really what we do. We're a $1 billion brand at retail, which, by the way, you know, to be that large at retail, you have to look for opportunities everywhere, which is why for a special time only, we'll have these fireside chat with Arjun T-shirts available at kiosks around the Web Summit here. So this is a
go and get yourself.
Yeah,
I could be in the ring next.
I'll give you the first one.
Brilliant.
First one's free.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Look at that.
But you know, we're a media juggernaut. We are seen in 180 countries around the globe, broadcast in 20 different languages. We have 825 million social media followers around the world. We're the number 1 sports channel on YouTube. We're the number 2 channel on YouTube overall. You look at our WWE Network, it's available on any streaming device, has about 1.5 million steady state subscribers. It's our fastest growing business, as you said. And we're family-friendly entertainment. Kids love our programming. They come with their parents. It's multi-generational. And, over 40% of our viewership is female. So we're one of the most diverse, both age-wise and gender-wise, products in the world.
Let's talk a little bit more about this business, the WWE Network. When you look at that versus live shows over the next perhaps 5 years, do you expect live shows to continue to contribute the bulk of the business, or does the OTT platform become even more important?
Well, I think it becomes more important globally, for sure. Yeah. You know, we do over 500 live events somewhere in the world. Almost every day we're doing one throughout the year. You know, live events are important to us. That's where we touch you on the most emotional level. We come right to you, right to your home, basically. You go to the arena, you can feel and touch and see, and it's just, it attacks your senses, you know. It's an amazing experience. But to connect globally, whether through television, whether through our massive social media following, or whether going deeper into our most hardcore fans through the WWE Network, where they can see that most premium content live. Yeah. Live is where it's at now. And Monday Night Raw, SmackDown live in the U.S., around the world it airs live most places. That's a huge opportunity for us. And international is massive. 70% of our viewership comes from international, but only 30% of our revenue comes from international. That's a huge delta, and the opportunity for growth there is massive.
And part of that international growth, I presume, is through the WWE Network. I know you've launched a few shows that are local to market, so the UK Championship, for
Yes.
example, on the network. How do you do localized content, and how does that, or how is that going to fuel the growth of your international business?
Well, the growth of it, it's interesting. About 5 years ago, we started a much more specific recruiting process. We developed the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. We took on a whole different training process with our talent and our athletes. We recruited them differently. We started recruiting from around the world, whether that be in the US from the NFL or from Olympics around the world. From every sport, from every walk of life, we recruit globally now. 40% of our talent base that's in Orlando training right now come from international. And when you take those localized talent and you then create localized content around them, whether that be a tournament, whether that's a weekly show, you begin to engage a fan base where they can see people from where they are succeeding in a way that they go from localized to regional to NXT, our developmental brand, to Raw, to SmackDown, to WrestleMania, and they can see that growth. It's very meaningful. It's the Yao Ming in China situation, you know, and we're really making big headway into that, and there'll be some huge announcements internationally in the next few months.
And part of that growth, putting on these shows is a huge time, it's huge investment. Are you also hiring local teams beyond the superstars to camera people, to production staff as well? Are you localizing that far?
Sure, you know, WWE is a different animal almost than anything else. There's really nothing else like us in the world. A lot of sports, it's just kind of point and shoot. They're shooting what's happening in front, and that's the end of it. We're more akin to shooting a live movie or a live television show. And the way we do production. So we are training all of that. We're looking for camera techs and sound engineers and lighting crews, and we're training them in Orlando, Florida too, at the Performance Center. And now the goal is to branch that Performance Center out. We're looking for opportunities in Europe. We're looking for opportunities in the Middle East or India. We're looking for opportunities in China to create that same process, that same training situation, recruiting, training, content situation that then makes it a truly global brand.
Your WWE Network is, of course, all around WWE content. There are other OTT providers out there. Do you see yourself working or wanting to work with the likes of Netflix or an Amazon to boost distribution, or is WWE Network growing enough for you to keep your content on there?
I think right now it's growing enough for us. You know, it's one of our largest growing businesses. Like I said, we have a little over 1.5 million steady state. It's growing rapidly, but it really super serves our most hardcore fans, our most ardent fans. There's almost 10,000 hours of library content on there. We have another close to 100,000 hours that we're digitizing. You know, the live content that we put out is our most premium content, and that's where our fans are engaging with it. And they can do it on any device, which is great for them, because as you know, you can now, it's, you know, your phone or any place you are, you can watch it anytime.
You mentioned the Yao Ming situation in China. You struck a deal to launch the WWE Network in China just a few months back. What is the potential of that particular market? It's a market that a lot of businesses really want to get into. They often struggle. What's your strategy, and what do you see the potential in China?
Well, it's huge. There's quite a few people there. I'm not sure if you're aware, but yeah, the opportunity there is huge. There's a little bit of a gap for us of them not necessarily knowing what we are. It's one of the few places in the world where they don't. We're making that process more available. We were in there a little over a year ago with a recruiting trip. We brought back 11 Chinese nationals with us to the U.S. and have them training. They're successfully training now, and we're looking at opportunities to localize there, you know, whether through our partners with PPTV over there or a different way. The opportunity is massive, much like it is in India. India, we're the number 2 thing there, cricket being number 1, but we're right behind it. It's the most, you know, the Western kind of content that has resonated the most, and we haven't even begun to localize yet. So as we do, we just hired a female athlete from India in one of our recruiting trips named Kavita Devi, and she competed in a tournament that we did for women called the Mae Young Classic, and just her appearance in that alone, overnight, she did millions and millions of social media hits in India. The interest in her there is massive.
Yeah.
And when we can make that kind of engagement on somebody that they have no knowledge of at that point in time, just because she's local, it's a huge opportunity for us. Like I said, 70% of our viewership is international, just 30% of the revenue.
So clearly the key here is talent, right? It's talent,
yes.
It's local. But how do you find the next Triple H, the next Rock, the next Stone Cold? Is there a formula, or is that?
No, there's no formula, but we're pretty good at creating it.
Yeah.
In reality, you're looking every place in the world for talent. The biggest thing we look for, first and foremost, is the quality human being. That's the first thing I look for. We're looking for, when we do the tryouts, we're looking for emergent leaders, people that when you exhaust them are willing to pick the other person up and help them, because WWE is really a team. Unlike a combat sport or something where you're competing against each other, you have two people in the ring, they're working together to put on a show. And that's an important aspect for us. But then the second biggest thing we look for is charisma. We're looking for the X factor, the person that walks into a room and just everybody's eye goes to them. That's probably the most important thing. The physicality, obviously, very important, but that charisma factor that allows people to connect with them, because truly that's what they watch. They watch characters, and then they watch the story that you put that character in, and they engage.
We are at a technology conference, of course. A lot of people talking about what is the future then of entertainment, of how you consume things, of how you view things. One of the talks, of course, is around virtual reality as well. Is that something you guys have looked into at all, bringing your shows into the VR space?
It is something that we've looked into. We've done quite a few experiments with it already. In some ways, it's kind of custom made for what we do. I think as that technology improves, it will get better and better. But, everybody wants to be there live and in person. And if it's WrestleMania and you can put a headset on or whatever that device is at the time, and you can actually put yourself in that front row sitting there experiencing it, it's a whole different point of view. So I think it's wide open for us. It's just figuring out the how and the when,
Yeah, absolutely. What about the competitive landscape? You've obviously talked about the unique offering of WWE. You've been through periods where there has been intense competition from WCW and the others as well. What about now? Do you see an even more fierce competitive landscape from boxing or from UFC or anything like that?
So it's funny that people always make the reference to a combat sport for us, but like I said, we're totally different from that. We're to make that association is like saying boxing competes with the movie Rocky. Yeah. We're a television show, we're a movie, we're theater. We compete with everything, though, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, everything from a live event standpoint, from a consumption standpoint, just from a sheer viewership standpoint. I think one of the biggest things we compete with today is sleep. People, there's so many options for people from an entertainment standpoint or things that can take their time. You constantly have something in your hand. It's, do I sleep? Do I watch this? Do I, so there's competition everywhere. I think that's our biggest competition. But if you create great content, if you create great characters, they will come.
And you see some of these actual, other brands as sometimes collaborations between them as well. I've seen in the past with boxing or with UFC or anything like that as well.
Sure, I think that those opportunities, the one great thing about the WWE is we're used to being live all the time. Our content is almost 24/7. Our ecosystem evolves. What you see on TV continues on social media in a 24/7 format. It brings you to the network, which continues so you can even view the past. It's 24/7. It makes us very nimble. We can switch on a dime. We're always willing to gamble on ourselves, and we're always willing to reinvent ourselves. I don't think there's too many companies out there that would have taken the gamble that we did, WWE did, in taking our pay-per-view model, which was our largest business, and just basically tearing it up and saying we're going to start over and we're going to go with an OTT service. When we already had a linear deal on the table that we turned down to go OTT because we looked into the future and we thought that's where it's headed, and we're willing to gamble on ourselves. We know we will work harder, we know we will work smarter, and we're willing to make that gamble on ourselves and take that risk.
As we approach the end of the session, Paul, I want to talk about Triple H, the 14-time world champion. How did that character come about, and then how did you go from that to Paul Levesque, the WWE executive?
I started just like any other kid that I grew up watching it and being a huge fan and was such a huge fan that I thought I have to do this. when I got into it and started to get successful on it, and obviously all those things, like I talked about risk, that's all risk, but I took that gamble. When I got to WWE, I wanted to learn more about it. I was just as fascinated with the behind the scenes of it as I was with actually being in the ring, and I started to put my time into some of the behind the scenes stuff and trying to learn that aspect of it. It just carried on. My success in the ring led me to a point where Vince McMahon would come to me and say, when are you going to stop rolling around in the dirt and come actually do some real work at the office? I stepped into the office, and what was great for me is I was able to look at it and say, what we need to do is create a talent pipeline. We need to create that talent pipeline globally, and we need to do it now. And then I was able to take everything that I'd learned in a 25-year career and say, if I was starting today, what would I want to succeed? And I just went back in time and I created all those things in the Performance Center. We set up a system to recruit people. What would I look for out of everybody I've seen succeed? What's the common denominators? I look for those things. I train them in a way like our athletes have never been trained before, because nobody before this had something like the Performance Center or anything else. The opportunity then to compete in a brand like NXT, which is its own global touring brand. It's sort of a developmental brand, so to speak, but it's its own global touring brand that has its own fan base, 200 plus shows a year. When you get into these other markets and you localize the content, that's where they go, to NXT. They put the finishing touches on who they are and what they bring to the table. They go to Raw, they go to SmackDown, they go in front of 100,000 people at WrestleMania, and they prove themselves to the world.
So we've got about a minute left, Paul. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room starting out their own businesses, their own startups, hoping to become the next billion-dollar business. Through your career, you've had some great fights, some great matches, and some big moments. What is one of the biggest lessons you've learned over your career that you could give to these guys here?
So I think the biggest thing would be to take risks. If you believe in yourself, if you believe in what you bring to the table, you believe in your product, take the risk, take the gamble, bet on yourself. Because if you bet on yourself and you're willing to do the work, you're willing to put in more work than anybody else, you're willing to drive harder and engage more and never stop, then you can succeed and take that risk. And I think if you approach it that way and then take every day, and I learned this from Vince McMahon, approach every single day like it's your first day on the job. Just because you've done something this way and it's been successful doesn't mean it's still the right way. Relook at it, and if there's a different way to do it, be willing to say, I'm gonna forget about all of this, and I'm gonna take that risk again, and I'm gonna put all my chips on the table, and I'm gonna gamble on myself. WWE gambles on itself every day. Vince did it with WrestleMania. He laid all the chips on the table, and it succeeded. He did it when he tore up the pay-per-view industry and went to OTT, and it succeeded. We do it all the time. I've done it in my life, from my life to being a WWE superstar. You take all those gambles along the way to then saying, I'm going to step back from that and I'm going to become an executive and try to do it in a different manner and try to grow the business differently. Reinvent yourself, take the risk, gamble on yourself, and work harder than everybody else, and no doubt you can succeed at anything.
And that is a great point to end on. I'm glad I made it through this chat without getting pedigreed. Make sure you go out and buy the
still got a few seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Paul Levesque, a.k.a. Triple H.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.